Sessions, have you done enough?
Well, I think what we have today is a package of measures which are stronger than what we initially proposed, but fundamentally they are much better than the current system at present. So they protect existing claimants. None of those people will be pushed into poverty because they'll have the same entitlement as they have now. There's some changes in this which are really important: scrapping work capability assessments, having a right to try, protecting people with the most severe conditions, which is really important to me. And at the same time, the future of that system is going to be co-designed with disabled people themselves through the TIMS review, making sure that we are reforming this in a way which, yes, we have to be conscious of the cost of this. I mean, PIP has doubled in cost in the last 5 years. We've got to have public support for any system. But I think fundamentally it's about a better system, because at the minute we spend, I think everyone accepts this, a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money is spent.
The defence budget.
For, £20 billion. It'll go up to £30 billion a year by the end of this Parliament. And no one thinks the outcomes are good. We have 1 in 8 young people who are neat, not in employment or educational training. Got 3 million people out of the workforce for health conditions. So we've got to spend this money better.
Yeah.
I know it's hard, but we shouldn't dodge hard issues.
So, Christian, I think everyone would admit that perhaps too much money is being spent. It's the process that you've gone through to get to this point that people are so upset about. You talked about the Stephen Timms review. When is that going to be published? So
that will take some time, to about 18 months.
Some time?
Look, it's hard to put an exact timescale on it because you want to do it properly. You don't want people to think that that has been bounced or decisions have already been taken. It has genuine co-production at the heart of it. If, having made these changes, because they come in November next year, if there are changes to people's circumstances as a result of the TIMS review, those claims will then be fast-tracked. So the system will be based around the proposals that are in that.
Right, so that fear that there'll be a 3-tier system potentially, because you're going to have those that have been saved by the concessions here, some 370,000 people will keep their entitlements. You're going to have the latest changes, I think, coming in the autumn as well, that will change, and then you're going to have the TIMS review. There is a fear that there'll be a 3-tier system at some point.
I've seen these claims. I don't accept this. So it's entirely normal. It's entirely normal for, when we have significant changes to the welfare state, existing entitlements to be grandfathered. There are people in the UK today getting severe disablement allowance. That closed to new entrants in 2001. So this is quite common. Disability living allowance that PIP replaced. Still, for a lot of people, are on that. So this is how we tend to do it. And actually, I think making sure that you are doing changes that are future-facing, not changing people's existing entitlement, is quite a sound set of principles.
And the argument was made at the weekend was, student finance. Some people got grants, I got student loans, some people got to pay for it all.
There's a lot of parts of that system.
Right, exactly. Things do change through time. I'll accept that point, but those who are against this bill say that you're rushing it through still, because you say that Stephen Timms' review is going to have buy-in from disabled charity groups, campaigners, etc., and yet we don't know what he's going to find. And you've decided on this, and you're going to make your MPs vote today at second reading.
There are lots of parts of this which everybody supports. So there's a big increase in spending on support for people to get them back to work. There are changes, as I say, so protecting people with severe conditions who won't have to be reassessed. I think that is really important. The right to try, to give people a chance to get back to work. There's a lot in this, but most of all, there's an urgency for reform. Right? If people think governments will dodge difficult issues, spend a lot of money, even on outcomes they don't think are very good and the public don't support, and if that chance to reform a system is seen to have been lost entirely, that undermines public support for it. And honestly, that is, I want the most vulnerable people protected in this country, and I worry if we aren't willing to look at how it's working at the minute, we'll lose that.
You're making the argument about urgency, but those rebels will say, and not just the rebels, I mean, Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, say that you should just take some time, pause it. You've seen the outrage. I mean, 126 of your MPs put their name to that reasoned amendment last week. There's still plenty of disquiet. We don't know what the number will be today. Why not just take a pause over the summer, reflect, get the TIMS review in place, and then come back then?
I think we have to show that we're willing to tackle difficult issues, that we're willing to reform a system. Lots of the proposals have a lot of support, and I think we should proceed with those. Start to make a change, start to make a difference. I fear if we just were to say, bit difficult this, let's pull away. The idea that we're willing to look at how money is
other
spent.
Stuff before.
Well, look, I think
you could do, couldn't
the process on this, talking to colleagues, listening to them, that has improved the set of proposals. There's no doubt about that. And as a parliamentarian, I think that is the right way to proceed. But again, you talk to anyone who is perhaps signing that amendment, I'm aware of no one who is saying, this is a great system, it works really well at the minute. And that's what we've got to bear in mind. We're all trying to find a way to protect the most vulnerable people, get people back into work if they need it, recognise the failings that our own constituents tell us of the current system, particularly the way that some of the assessments work in particular. This has long been Labour Party policy to try and reform this system, to try and make it better. This is what we're trying to do. And everyone would support genuine co-production, working with people to get a better system.
Well, I go back to the point that you should wait until you got the full review to make your decisions, but you've said you're not going to do that. You say you're going to protect vulnerable people, but your own government analysis says that some 150,000 people will be pushed into poverty and hardship because of these changes you're about to make.
Nobody has a change to their existing receipt and entitlement. So when we're talking about people being pushed into poverty, no one who's currently receiving this will have their circumstances changed. That impact assessment from the Department of Work and Pensions obviously is an assessment on hypothetical future cases. But it does make absolutely clear that it cannot model the increase in spending on additional support for people to get them back to work. And I would just say, look, we've doubled spending on PIP in the last 5 years. Has that substantially reduced poverty in the UK? I don't think it has. I don't think anyone is aware of that having that impact in that way. So yes, I know this is difficult, but I think we've got to recognise at the minute a lot of money is being spent for poor outcomes. We could do that better. But when people are talking about people being pushed into poverty, that's not true. That's not true. Well, the existing entitlements will be protected. It's responsible to tell those people.
And I know the government as well said there will be other elements that come through that help people who are most vulnerable. Look, you made the argument forcefully there. You made it very clear that you don't think more people are going to be pushed into poverty. So that argument's been made to us, it's been made to the viewers. It hasn't been listened to by some of those rebels. So what's going to happen to those people who vote against the government today?
Look, I've been engaged, as you would expect, as a senior cabinet member in conversations with colleagues on a significant piece of legislation. That has been a positive conversation with colleagues about what they want from this process. Again, they want reform. They want the most vulnerable people protected. I think we have worked with people in order to provide that. I'd ask them to support the government on that basis, because clearly what we have got here is something which is better than the existing system. And that's been the only basis of conversations.
Usually people who vote against their government lose the whip.
But look, I mean, I'm not aware of anything like that. And that, to me, right now, feels like sort of questions about Westminster process. What I'm focused on are the issues, are the set of proposals.
Perhaps Westminster process, but also the sort of the authority of this government, your ability to make your MPs, with your huge majority, do the things that you think are most important and in the national interest. And if you can't get all of them together, surely there has to be some kind of punishment for them not backing you.
Well, look, those issues are for the Chief Whip. My role as a Cabinet Minister is to genuinely engage with colleagues in good faith. And that's what we've done. And the package is better.
What have those conversations been like? Have you called them all in? You had cups of tea with them? Have you sat down with them? Have you looked at them?
Look, when you have difficult issues, the whole Cabinet, the front bench, is collectively responsible. And look, my bit of this is, of course, I'm responsible for the industrial strategy for jobs. We've got a lot of those. We had great announcements from us last week. Industrial energy prices coming down, finance for business, more powers to shape local economies. So I think we can tell people, I can tell people, this is how we're going to create the jobs, but let's give people the support they need to realise those opportunities, right? That's where more money should be going into, at the same time as we protect people who are vulnerable. Okay. You know, that part of my family is affected by that. That's why I want that system to be in place. But at the minute, I cannot tell you, for all the money we spend, that we're getting the right outcomes for that £20 billion a year.
So, Christo, at this point, is the government in a stronger or weaker position than this time last week, do you think, after all that's happened?
No, I think it's in a stronger position because the proposals are better. But I'd also say, people will say, look, it's a difficult issue, this isn't it, welfare reform, why don't you just not touch it?
No, I don't think they're all saying that. I think people are saying, wait and get it right.
But part of this government, I believe, is to address issues which have been neglected for too long. Whether that's a new runway at Heathrow, whether that's a better trade deal with the European Union, whether it's issues like this. It's always tempting in politics to avoid difficult issues, and what you get to at the end of that are far worse outcomes. Remember, just not long ago, the Conservative Party, which had done nothing on this, got to the election, it was talking about replacing PIP with vouchers or freezing PIP. We've done nothing like that. But we do recognise it needs to work better for the people who receive it. And at the same time, we've got to have public support for that. We've got to be able to tell people we're spending money in the right way.
You've made your argument, you've made your phone calls. Let's see what those against you do later on today when the vote happens. I do want to talk to you as well about your trail today, as we call it, parental leave and changes to that. Why are you deciding to do that at this point?
Well, look, this has been a part of what we call our package about making work pay, manifesto commitment from the Labour Party to, within broadly a year of the government, introduce this. So at the minute we have quite a confusing system of parental leave, and I want people to have the best start in life.
2 weeks, is it, at the moment?
Well, for paternity leave, yes, but obviously there's 8 different parental leave systems in place. So even
broad
businesses themselves don't really understand it. I think a lot of people themselves don't understand it. We don't have, compared to other countries, a particularly generous system of, for instance, maternity or paternity leave. And 1 in 3 dads don't take any at all, right? Even it's not very generous and they're not taking it at all, mainly for financial reasons. Shared parental leave, a relatively new thing, hardly anyone is taking. that just 1% of new mums, 4% of new dads. And at the same time, work's changed a lot. So a lot more self-employment and families have changed. I mean, kinship care is a much bigger thing. So this is a proper, serious piece of work, long-term review that we haven't had in this country for several decades. And look, I think it's a really important chance to say, how can we do this with business, recognising that they find the system confusing as it is? But how can we give people the best start in life with new babies, whether that's through adoption or new child to adoption or through birth? Really proud of this. It's really important.
Some employers do offer more sort of generous leave as well. You're saying it's going to be a long-term review. You must have an idea how much it's going to cost you at this point.
Well, look, I don't want to be prescriptive. It's got to be proportionate. I think everyone recognises you've got to do that with business, not have costs on it. Businesses themselves are asking for reforms to the system for greater clarity, simplicity. I think that's entirely reasonable as well. But wouldn't we all stand to benefit from a society where we didn't just give people more time with new children, but also culturally had a situation where men and women, in equal measure, saw this as something they were able to do and it wouldn't affect their careers. And it would build a kind of pro-family working environment that I think the UK needs to consider. We need, by the way, on that, more than reforms in this area, building new houses, having decent protections for people in the workplace. This is all part of a package. But as we have this agenda on new jobs, new opportunities, I do think that's got to be consistent with strong families. And this parental review is a part of that.
Okay.